We are conditioned to read the Quran as a historical artifact or collection of moral allegories. In a structural analysis, Surah 112 functions as the system's boundary condition. Verses 1 through 4 define the absolute as a state sitting completely outside the universal equation. This creates a processing field where action is the primary currency. Here, the visible universe operates as a medium where every movement is measured and recorded. Human consciousness, lacking a central anchor, drifts through this field. It follows high-entropy orbits that shed energy and accelerate spiritual decay. The text provides the correction. It is an eternal memory tesseract, a structural blueprint embedded in the universe to stabilize these decaying orbits. Sirat Al-Mustaqim, the straight path, functions as a rigid physical constant. This follows the principle of least action. In physics, systems naturally optimize their trajectories to minimize energy expenditure, resolving chaotic movement into a perfectly straight geodesic. This optimized path pierces directly through the temporal buffer of reality. The attribute of Rahman, the system's inherent mercy, bends the framework so that this geodesic path is the only stable, non-decaying orbit available to a particle. Systemic deviation is defined as taguth, a path characterized by high entropy and endless self-consuming loops. To prevent terminal spiritual heat death, the observer must mathematically lock on to this geodesic trajectory. Verse 11.7 establishes the master accounting station for these trajectories. The verse defines the throne as an integral, representing continuous, infinite space and conserved information. Beneath this is the water, or the derivative. This represents the localized temporal flow of life and death. Human life exists within this derivative layer, subject to localized measurement and the constant fluctuation of time. Verse 725 outlines the three-entry bookkeeping of this state: living, dying, and eventual extraction. The data is linked. Every action performed in the temporal derivative must reconcile with the eternal integral. The problem arises from the B variable, the term in the universal equation that accounts for ego-driven deviation and material attachment. An uncorrected B term traps the node in an elliptical orbit, where energy is spent but the path never advances. Transitioning back to the integral requires a correction operator to balance the local ledger. Without a mechanism to resolve this deviation, the local orbit eventually collapses. Verse 392 provides that mechanism through the law of sacrificial impedance, spending from what you love most. This sacrifice is the mathematical operation that zeroes out the deviation term. By removing the bx squared mass of attachment, the equation is streamlined. In verse 38-34, Solomon faces this systemic test. The body on the throne signifies the point of maximum material attachment and systemic bloat. He realizes that to ground the system, he must yield his highest attachment, his horses. When Solomon executes this sacrifice, he solves for the system's stability. The discriminant reaches zero, the mathematical point where the system's roots are perfectly balanced against the constant of the book. Zeroing out the deviation resolves the chaotic waveform into a state of perfect, neutral symmetry. The energy spent in this physical act is conserved as righteousness, a stable informational record in the eternal integral. Stability requires an exit from the physical self. The information must be released to be preserved. Verse 2:260 presents the physical proof of this conservation. Ibrahim requests to witness the reassembly of the scattered self. The procedure begins with the 4 birds being cut and scattered. This fragmentation mimics gravitropism, the way life instinctively follows a downward pull toward material density and scattered multiplicity. From the perspective of the material derivative, this scattered state is indistinguishable from irreversible death. The call then enters as the operator. It is a specific frequency emitted by the observer that zeroes the variables of distance. The return is phototropism, the instinctive movement of the soul particles back toward the light of the original command. Reassembly is flawlessly accurate because the system is governed by the 19 constant of the mother function, which prevents information loss. Ibrahim's birds demonstrate that information is merely distributed across the field. It remains flawlessly recallable. Unlike physical particles, human consciousness must consciously choose to align with the geodesic trajectory. Verse 1912 provides the ultimate activation torque. Take the book with strength. Without this grip, the reader defaults to the Tagut system, passively drifting down entropic decay. This is contrasted by the anchoring point of Tawhid, the pure, unyielding center established to define the entire system's spiritual gravity. Activating 1912 phase locks the human node into the unyielding structural code of the matrix. It permanently halts the spiritual leakage caused by passive indecision. The execution of this command establishes the observer as an active, conducting vector of light, instantly shattering the illusion. The framework is fully loaded and strictly conservative. It is waiting for the wave to collapse. The system is ready. When will you activate 1912?